The earth of Jezreel was dark, rich, and fragrant, holding within its depths the quiet memories of generations who had tilled it under the watching eyes of the heavens. Naboth was a simple man, a farmer whose hands were lined with the heavy dirt of his ancestors and whose heart belonged entirely to the true God above. He did not care for the vanity of royal courts or the shimmering trappings of silver and bronze. His sanctuary was a humble vineyard where green vines coiled like living embroidery across the rolling hillsides. Beside the sprawling rows of plump, heavy grapes stood a modest wooden hut. There, Naboth lived in peaceful warmth with his wife, Hannah, a gentle soul whose soft laughter lightened his heaviest labors, and their 14-year-old son, Cyril, a quick-witted boy who was growing into the strength and spirit of his father. Together, the family lived off the yield of their land, asking for little and offering daily praises to the Almighty. Yet, outside their quiet borders, a dark shadow was spreading over the kingdom. King Ahab had turned his heart away from the heavenly Creator, submitting instead to the whispers of ancient horrors and surrounding himself with the dark worship of Baal, a vile, ravenous demon closely tied to the devil himself. Beneath Ahab's rule, the realm trembled, but nestled within the valleys around Naboth's farm was a secret community of the faithful, men and women who quietly preserved the sacred ways and met under the starlight to pray. The peaceful atmosphere of the farm shattered one afternoon when a towering figure descended from the high ridge. It was the heroic prophet Elijah, his eyes blazing like hot embers and his cloak ragged from the wilderness. He moved with urgent, heavy strides into the shadow of Naboth's wooden hut. Naboth set down his wooden rake, meeting the prophet's grave gaze. Elijah warned him that Ahab had discovered the hidden sanctuary of the faithful and was riding toward them with absolute destruction in his heart. The king sought to cleanse the land of all allegiance to the heavenly God and would spare nothing in his path. Before the warning could even settle into Naboth's mind, the distant horizon turned black with rising smoke. The thunder of iron-shod hooves rattled the valley floor as Ahab's iron-clad soldiers swept through the hills like a swarm of locusts. What followed was hours of pure, relentless agony. Ahab's men descended upon the secret community of believers, torching their modest homes and driving their steel without mercy. Thousands of innocent youngsters from the faithful community were cut down, their souls brutally sacrificed in smoke and blood to satisfy the monstrous appetite of Baal. The air grew thick with the smell of burning ash and sweet incense, a terrible stench rising to the sky as Ahab oversaw the utter carnage. Yet, despite the chaos raging around him, Naboth refused to flee. When the army finally surged toward the edge of his farm, Naboth stepped into the dirt at the head of his vineyard. He stood alone, his body tall and unyielding, clutching a simple wooden staff to defend the vines his forefathers had planted under God's grace. Riding at the front of the war band, King Ahab pulled hard on the reins of his black stallion, raising his hand to halt his men. The king looked upon the bloody dirt, then down at the humble farmer, standing resolute before rows of undamaged, glowing grapes. A wicked curiosity flickered in Ahab's eyes. He gestured for his soldiers to hold their blades and rode forward until his horse's breath blew hot against Naboth's face. Ahab looked over the pristine vineyard and spoke, his voice dripping with smooth, deceitful charm. He told Naboth that he would immediately spare him, Hannah, and young Cyril from the slaughter. He offered to buy the vineyard on the spot for a fair, staggering amount of gold. Ahab promised that he would use the land for no evil purpose, but rather to manufacture a pure, exquisite wine. A wine so grand that the whole world would love its satisfying, special flavor. Naboth looked into the eyes of the tyrant, feeling the weight of his ancestors on his shoulders and the majesty of God in his heart. He raised his chin and answered firmly that the inheritance of his fathers, blessed by the Lord above, was not for sale at any price. Ahab's smile vanished, replaced by a cold, deadly sneer. He told Naboth that he would return to his palace for now, but warned him with a cruel laugh that he would get the vineyard in his own ways, regardless. As Ahab turned his horse away, he leaned down and whispered a bitter vow into the dust. When he returned, it would be to collect Hannah's head as his personal trophy. The mist rolled thick and cold through the stone corridors of the royal castle that night.
Go.
Ahab paced back and forth in his dimly lit chambers, his pride stinging from the farmer's refusal. He called for his wife, Jezebel, seeking her notorious, villainous intelligence to conspire a devilish master plan of revenge so he could crush Naboth and claim the prized land. Jezebel smiled genuinely at Ahab, her eyes glittering like crushed glass in the candlelight. She told him that she had received strange, powerful visions during the night, directly from Baal, ideas that were meant to come true. In her dream, the dark entity had instructed her on how to completely dismantle the righteous farmer. She told Ahab that the path forward required psychological ruin. She would slip into the enemy's trust and sleep with their emotions, while Ahab used false witnesses to convince the entire country that Naboth was a corrupt, dangerous con man leading a twisted satanic cult behind his pious facade. Ahab grinned viciously, stepping forward to clasp Jezebel's hands. He praised her sharp mind, calling her his sharp knife and his pretty smart flower. He declared that he would use Jamal and Emil, two of his slickest viziers, to act as false victims when the final strike came, ensuring the farm's precious vineyard remained spared while its owner was destroyed. To prepare the ground, Ahab ordered Jezebel to go in secret and spy upon Naboth and his lingering community of buffoons. Back at the farm, night had settled heavy and silent over the valley. Inside the small wooden hut, Naboth softly sang a prayer as he put 14-year-old Cyril to bed, tucking a woolen blanket around his son's shoulders. Outside, the night was still, save for the wind blowing through the trees. Naboth waited for Hannah, who had stepped out into the night to feed the wild foxes that inhabited the rock mounds near the edge of their plot. A faint, frantic knock rattled the hut's tiny wooden door. Thinking it was Hannah returning from her task, Naboth rushed forward and pulled the door open. But standing on the threshold was Jezebel, her royal robes dark with dust, clutching her face as she wept bitterly. Through loud, theatrical sobs, Jezebel lied to Naboth, claiming she had just witnessed a terrible betrayal. She told him she had seen Hannah sneaking away in the dark to embrace King Ahab, kissing him intimately before the two departed the farm together. Naboth gasped, a sharp, suffocating pain tearing through his chest. Though a seed of doubt nagged at his spirit, the sheer weight of the accusation filled him with agonizing confusion and hot grief. Tears welled in his eyes as he looked at the queen, asking her through his pain why she was telling him this, and if she herself had ever known true love. Jezebel looked up, her tear-stained face settling into a cold, mocking emptiness. She told him that, in a world of sorrow, there was no such thing as love, and that she had come to make him happier so he could face this tragic situation like a real man. While Jezebel wove her web of deceit inside the hut, the truth was unfolding out in the dark fields. Hannah had been ambushed while carrying grain to the wild foxes. 3 of Ahab's heaviest soldiers lunged from the shadows, gagging her and dragging her across the rough soil to the center of the field. There, standing tall against the moonlight, was a wooden scarecrow. The 3 soldiers hauled Hannah up against the central beam, tying her securely to the scarecrow's wooden torso. Ahab stepped out from the darkness, a heavy iron-tipped rod in his hands. Without a word, he struck her mercilessly, beating her body to the bone, until her cries turned into faint, bloodied gasps. Leaving her battered form bound to the post, Ahab smiled, preparing the next phase of his trap. Inside the hut, Jezebel reached out to comfort the heartbroken farmer, laying a hand on his trembling shoulder. But before her fingers could settle, a door creaked open behind them. Cyril stood in the doorway of his small room, his eyes sharp and filled with clear, youth-fueled perception. He stepped between his father and the queen, yelling at Naboth that Jezebel was manipulating him, spinning lies under her tyrant husband's leash. Before Naboth could fully process his son's warning, the sound of heavy wheels and galloping hooves tore through the quiet night air. A royal carriage slammed to a halt outside the hut. The doors were kicked open, and Jamal and Emil, Ahab's 2 cunning viziers, stormed into the tiny wooden home. Carried between them was Hannah, barely surviving, her clothes torn and her body bruised to the bone. With a cruel laugh, the 2 viziers threw her broken body onto the wooden floorboards right at Naboth's feet, telling him mockingly to sweep her up like real dirt. Before Naboth could drop to his knees to embrace his dying wife, the main door was smashed off its hinges. Ahab marched into the hut, flanked by 5 heavily armed soldiers. The king pointed a ringed finger at the bewildered farmer and ordered his troops to handcuff Naboth immediately, setting the frame up into motion. The iron cuffs slammed shut around Naboth's wrists as he was dragged away into the night, leaving Cyril and the barely conscious Hannah behind in the ruined hut. By morning, Naboth was hauled in chains into the grand, sunlit courtroom of the city. A massive crowd had gathered, stirred up by rumors spread by the royal house. Jamal and Emil stepped forward before the high judge, putting on a dramatic show of agony and disgust. They confessed their bold lies to the audience, claiming they had caught Naboth in the act of murdering his own wife for her inheritance, declaring loudly that there was no worse gold digger in the kingdom than this wicked farmer. To seal the lie, Jezebel stood among the noble court, dabbing her eyes with a silk cloth and pretending to weep uncontrollably for the ruined family. Ahab sat upon his side throne, a triumphant smile gracing his lips. Seeing the king's favor, the corrupted judge stood up and addressed the crowd, declaring that the murderous con man was guilty of leading a dark, corrupt cult and must be punished by all those who believed in Baal as the true king of the realm. Suddenly, the heavy iron doors at the back of the courtroom burst open, slamming against the stone walls. The prophet Ezekiel strode fearlessly down the central aisle, his voice ringing out like thunder over the hushed crowd. He pointed a trembling finger straight at Ahab and the judge, stepping in to defend the innocent Naboth and the honor of the heavenly God. Ezekiel shouted that Ahab was murdering the innocent and inheriting more and more land through blood and deceit. He prophesied that the king would be utterly punished by a true, almighty force of consequence sent by the one and only God above, who would soon eliminate the face of evil from the holy earth. Hearing the divine proclamation, Naboth raised his hands as high as his chains would allow. He praised the Lord God above, throwing out a passionate, beautiful prayer of devotion that resonated off the marble walls, placing his spirit entirely into the hands of his heavenly creator. The enraged mob, incited by Ahab's guards and dark priests, dragged Naboth out of the courtroom and into the center of the vast city plaza. Thousands of citizens, blinded by the king's lies and devoted to Baal, surrounded the chained farmer. They raised heavy stones, jagged rocks, and flaming wooden torches, hurling them down upon Naboth in a relentless torrent of hate and fire. As the stones struck and the flaming sticks consumed his physical frame, Naboth felt no fear. The flames roared around his body. But from the very heart of the roaring fire, a brilliant, blinding beam of golden light pierced the sky. Naboth's spirit, pure and untouched by the world's corruption, was seen by all, ascending within the radiant column of light, rising straight into the eternal peace of heaven.